So we are back for another video to help you build wealth the right way. So today we're going to be talking about Roth IRAs and some of the common questions I get when it comes to Roth IRAs and the biggest mistakes that I see high income earners make when it comes to Roth IRAs as well too. So if you watched my last video, you're probably familiar with what Roth IRA is, but in case you didn't, an IRA is an individual retirement account. Now that is going to be separate and different than like your company sponsored account, like your 401ks or your 403bs. An IRA is typically going to be opened through a bank or a brokerage, and a Roth IRA is going to be an after-tax account. So you would contribute to after-tax dollars. It grows tax deferred, and then you can take that out after 59.5, completely tax-free. So some of the differences between just like Roth IRAs and 401ks. So you may have a Roth 401k available to you, but that is going to be, again, different. So with a Roth IRA, it's going to have different contribution limits than 401k. You're also, with a Roth IRA, going to have access to your contributions as well too. There isn't a penalty for the money that you actually contribute if you want to draw that out. And IRAs in general are going to have more investment selections than 401ks. So typically with your 401k, you may get like a slew of different like mutual funds available to you, but you're generally going to have a lot more options when it comes to IRA investments. So Roth IRAs are going to have really great tax benefits. So let's say that you put money into a Roth IRA, you're going to get taxed at your current tax bracket. So let's say you're in the 28% tax bracket right now, and then once you reach beyond 59.5, when you start withdrawing that money, even if you're going to be 37% tax bracket and a lot higher, you're not going to get taxed on the money that you're withdrawing through the account. So it can be very powerful because as opposed to pre-tax accounts like traditional IRAs and traditional 401ks, let's say you have $2 million and just to make the math easy, you're getting taxed at a 30% rate. You actually really only have around $1.4 million because you still are going to have to pay, 30% taxes, on all of that money. But in a Roth IRA, you're going to have access to all $2 million of that dollars, without having to pay any more additional taxes. So for the Roth IRA, there are a couple of rules around, being able to get that tax-free benefit. And so as I mentioned, you do have to be older than 59.5 to withdraw your earnings completely tax-free. And there is a 5-year rule to contributions that you make. So even if you are older than 59.5, let's say, for example, you're 61 and you put in, let's say, $10,000 worth of contributions into a Roth IRA over the course of a few years. Well, and that money, let's say, goes from $10,000 to $15,000. You can't just access that money without waiting that 5-year period. So if it's only been 3 years, you aren't going to get that tax-free benefit. So if you contribute at age, for example, 61, you do have to wait 5 years from the time you made those contributions in order to get those earnings, tax-free. So that is important to keep in mind. So not everyone can contribute to a Roth IRA. You can only contribute to a Roth IRA if you have what's called qualified earned income. So qualified earned income is going to be all income from employment that will be included in your gross income. So those are things like wages, salaries, tips, other forms of taxable employer compensation, and any earnings from self-employment as well too. So if you own your business, any of your net earnings, that would also be included in qualified earned income. Now, not all income, again, is considered qualified earned income. Some examples of things that are not considered qualified earned income are pension income, income from annuities, income from, welfare benefits, unemployment income, or social security income, or workers' compensation. So if you're receiving, only those types of income, keep in mind that that income is not considered qualified earned income, and you cannot contribute that into, an IRA. So when it comes to IRAs, there are going to be limits, and those are different from, most employer-sponsored plans. So with a Roth IRA, in the year, 2024, when this video was made, the current limit contributions is $7,000. If you're under age 50, and if you're over 50, you do qualify for catch-up contributions, so you can contribute up to $8,000. But you want to keep in mind that, those income or those contribution limits are relatively low. So make sure that you're not over contributing, into that Roth. And then, for a lot of, higher income earners, there are also going to be income limits to contribute to the Roth. Essentially, the IRS does not want, healthier people having tax-free income. So if you're over these income limits, you cannot contribute to a Roth IRA directly. Back in 2023, that was $138,000 to $153,000, and in 2024, it is $146,000 to $161,000. So, for example, if you're over $161,000 as a single tax filer, you cannot contribute directly into an IRA. If you're married, in 2023, those limits were $218,000 to $228,000. In 2024, those limits are $230,000 to $240,000 of gross household income. So I actually had a client, I recently took him on this year, and he was well above the, household income that was eligible to contribute to a Roth IRA. Believe their income was, maybe close to around $38,000, and even the year before in 2023, it was, right around the low 300s or so. So he had made contributions to a Roth IRA back in 2023 and in 2024. Now those contributions aren't eligible. So it presents, a pretty big problem, because if you make ineligible contributions to a Roth, the IRS is going to charge you a 6% excise tax on any contributions that are ineligible every single year until you actually correct that mistake. So he was going to get charged, or he got charged that, 6% tax, back in 2023. But for him, what we had to go and do is do a recharacterization of his 2023 contribution and his 2024 contribution, so that he can recharacterize those into a non-deductible traditional IRA and not have to continue to pay that tax. So if you find yourself in a position where you have a higher income, and this oftentimes happens, maybe you start making contributions when you're below that limit and you just don't really keep track of it, and eventually you go beyond that limit and you're still making those contributions. So if if that happens to you, you want to make sure that you're tracking, when you actually see that income, and if you have to, you may have to recharacterize some of your Roth contributions into a non-deductible traditional IRA, because that 6% excise tax is going to be continued to get, applied to those contributions again every single year until it's corrected. So it's very important to, understand, where your income is, because you may be ineligible. So all common questions I usually get around Roth IRAs are, what if I contribute to a traditional IRA? Is that going to impact my ability to contribute to a Roth IRA? Well, any IRA contribution that you make is added together to that $7,000 limit. So, for example, if you make a $3,500 contribution to a traditional IRA, you're only going to be able to make another $3,500 contribution to a Roth IRA in the year 2024. So it is important to know that those, contributions add up. It doesn't matter how many Roth or traditional IRA accounts you have, all those contributions are going to be added up to be $7,000 that you're able to contribute for that year. All the common questions that I get are, will my 401k contributions impact, my IRA contributions? The answer is no. So those are completely separate. You can contribute the maximum amount to your 401k, and that's going to have no impact, on your IRA contributions. Now, it is important to know that if you do have a 401k, it may impact some of the taxes around, or tax implications around specifically a traditional IRA. That is something important to keep in mind, but the contribution limits, aren't going to be impacted. Those are completely two separate, types of retirement accounts, essentially. So big mistakes that I often see around, Roth IRA contributions, especially with my high income earners, as I mentioned before, not being aware of where your income is when you're making those contributions and making ineligible contributions. So you want to make sure, again, that's something that you're keeping track of. Also, confusing 401ks with IRAs. I've oftentimes run into people that are like, yeah, I have, an IRA and I've been contributing to it, and it's really just an employer-sponsored account. Again, they are completely different and separate, so it's important to keep that in mind. And then another thing I oftentimes see is, not investing properly in your IRAs. So because these accounts, are self-managed, you have a lot more autonomy over what you actually, do invest in. So just like any other investment, it's important to understand what your goals are, and what your age is, and, what you're trying to achieve, your risk tolerance, and all those different things, when you're going and selecting investments. But I've seen so many times someone in their 20s or 30s, just contribute cash to an IRA and not actually have invested. Or maybe they're in like debt investments when they're very young, and those just aren't the most appropriate types of investments for them to have, so they can really, grow long term. So, really important to understand these nuances so that you can, make sure you're, within contribution limits, if that applies to you. And then also make sure that you are, investing properly, which, understanding what your goals are is, absolutely critical. And so working with an advisor can be very helpful to make sure you're doing all these things right. So I hope this video was helpful for you guys. Hopefully you learned a couple things. If you did, please feel free to comment, like it, and share with someone else who this may be helpful for. And if you have any questions or you want to get in contact with us, feel free to reach out. Wrap it out.